My good pal Gwen and I are going to be talking about the story called The Crucible and a podcast called Cereal. Not the cereal that you could eat. It's spelled Serial. But some Frosted Flakes does sound really good right about now.
I agree. Let's go ahead and get this started.
Okay, so today we are going into detail about a crazy witch hunt in a small town called Salem and a semi-modern witch hunt murder trial case.
The Crucible is basically about a girl named Abigail Williams and how she worked for a family named the Proctors. The couple was happy at first, but when Abigail started getting close with John, things took a turn. John ended up having an affair with Abigail. John didn't take things that happened between them too serious, but Abigail, on the other hand, was quick to fall in love with him. When John's wife, Elizabeth, finds out that he had an affair with Abigail, she is fired. Abigail is very jealous of Elizabeth. She wants to find different ways to take her spot as the wife of John. This seems crazy to me because she is only 13. Later on in the story, Abigail and some other girls were caught in the woods dancing and supposedly conjuring evil spirits and summoning the devil. Now, dancing around a fire doesn't seem too suspicious, but back then it was basically forbidden because they instantly would think you're some kind of witch or something. Now back to Abigail. The girl was incredibly intelligent and patient to have thought up a plan like this, which involved Tituba, a slave girl, Abigail, we already know her, and Betty. She's Reverend Paris's daughter. This one woman was creating hysteria when she says, "I want to open myself. I want the light of God. I want the sweet love of Jesus. I danced for the devil. I wrote in his book. I go back to Jesus. I kiss his hand. I saw Sarah Good with the devil. I saw Goody Osborne with the devil. And I saw Bridget Bishop with the devil." Now, we all know they obviously did not dance with the devil, but why would they say these things and push the blame on others?
In the podcast Serial, there is a typical high school relationship that is between Adnan Syed and Haman Lee. They are keeping their relationship a secret from their families because they are not allowed to be dating. This is hard on them both because they really like each other and they have to lie and make things up to their parents just to be able to go out and see each other. This story all happened in 1999. Well, Adnan and Hay had been going off and on and would get on each other's nerves one day, and then of course they would be back to normal again the next day. Typical, right? Adnan was on the high school track team and Hay was the manager with her best friend for the wrestling team. She met a new guy named Don at the local Lens Crafters store there in Baltimore. She was caught up in Don, and she wanted to end things with Adnan. On January 13th, 1999, Adnan asked Hay for a ride. It was a huge inconvenience to her because that day she had to go pick up her cousin from school, and then she had to go and come back to the school so she could be on the bus in time to go to the wrestling meet. She said no, but then between 2 o'clock and 2:36, Haman Lee was pronounced dead. They could not find her body anywhere for a while after her death. A guy named Jay, that was one of Adnan's good friends, happened to know where the body was and took the police to go and get her. She ended up getting an autopsy done, and the cause of her death was of strangulation. Who do you think the first suspect was? Of course, the boyfriend. There are ways that both of these stories are alike, and Gwen is going to start explaining one of those reasons.
They both are about stereotyping someone and creating hysteria, which both can condemn people either to death or to prison for things that people really have no evidence of. In Syria, like Olivia has been saying, the ex-boyfriend was instantly a first pick. And in The Crucible, witchcraft was instantly a first pick without evidence, and they were both thrown way out of proportion. People suspected Adnan without any real evidence, and then created hysteria, which only made it much worse for him. And in The Crucible, these girls were suspected of witchcraft with no evidence really, and it got out to the townspeople, and they also lost it. Imagine that. Which again only made it worse for these girls and the townspeople, because soon to come, Abigail decides to ruin lives.
In the story The Crucible, if someone would see something remotely out of the ordinary, they would automatically think they were selling themselves to the devil. They would think any kind of suspicious activity was them interacting with the devil himself or the girls practicing witchcraft. In the podcast Serial, when Adnan and Jay went over to Kathy's house, Kathy had reported to the police that Adnan was acting suspicious and that he wasn't acting like himself when he was over there. The police and the state of Massachusetts assumed that he was acting so strange and not like himself because he really did kill Hay. They were trying to get a hold of Adnan because they wanted to talk to him and ask him some more questions. Little did Kathy know, Adnan was smoking Mary J. before he walked into her house. And from the way I've taken that part of the story, I feel like the reason why Adnan was acting the way he was was because he had probably had all that in his system on top of knowing the police were wanting to talk to him. It probably freaked him out because he did not know how to get out of the situation.
In the Crucible, a lot of morally right citizens were wrongfully accused for practicing witchcraft and in giving themselves to the devil. A lot of people would face the death penalty and would be hung in front of their communities over something they never truly did, but confessed because they were scared. In Serial, Adnan Syed could have definitely been wrongfully accused of murdering his ex-girlfriend, Haman. He went through a rigorous amount of trials and hearings and hearing other people's stories, but he could not speak the whole trial. Honestly, how wrong is that? To this day, we still have no idea if Nan was really the person that killed Hay. What? If after 17 years later Adnan was found not guilty, he would have wasted 17 years of his life in prison for something he never really did. The citizens in the Crucible were condemned to death because they were afraid. They lost their lives because of a false accusation made against them. This is said, I have seen too many frightful proofs in this court. The devil is alive in Salem, and we dare not quail to follow wherever the accusing finger points.
Another example of stereotyping in Adnan's case was how he is a Muslim. They had assumed that he had wrong intentions, he was more violent, and that he was jealous of Hay's new relationship with Dawn.
John Proctor says this, a fire is burning, I hear the boot of Lucifer, I see his filthy face. And it is my face and yours, Danforth, for them that quail, to bring men out of ignorance, as I have quailed, and as you quail. Now when you know, in all of your black hearts, that this be fraud. God curses our kind especially, and we will burn together. Proctor is extremely angered at this point, and he feels as if God is punishing him. When he says these things, he makes people believe that he really was associated with the devil.
In Serial, the prosecutors in the trial knew that Adnan was a Muslim and how he was religious. They had talked to people at Adnan's church, and they were saying how they knew he was such a good kid and how he was well respected, but little did they know he was stealing money from the offering box, and he was out smoking pot and partying whenever he wasn't at the church. This, to me, sounds like he was putting on a show for one place, like the church, and then being a total different person to the next place he went, like the parties. Both of these stories display both some kind of hysteria and stereotyping. The three examples that we explained to you from both stories were the main points we wanted to exemplify and go in depth a little bit more. Now we have more from Gwen.
We both really advise you to read this story and to listen to the podcast. We find them interesting and entertaining.
Wait, Gwen, wait. I have a shout out to give.
A shout out? Let's hear it.
I just wanted to give one last shout out to Mrs. Freeman for this A we are getting ready to receive because she is literally like the best ever. And thank you for being you, girl.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast brought to you by The Real Liv Shady and The Real G-Dog.
Thank you for listening. We're signing off.